I talked about this in my video yesterday, but you can make the case that this past weekend was the craziest weekend we've had so far of the college football season. A number of top 25 teams went down, and a number of other top 25 teams were on upset watch. The AP poll dropped yesterday, the college football playoff rankings will drop tomorrow, but today we have the most important top 25, my very own. Before we get to today's rankings, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. Speaking of upset watch, things weren't looking good for Oregon for most of this game. They were trailing at halftime, and they were trailing entering the fourth quarter. Even with the few minutes left in the game, things were still tied, but the Ducks hit a go-ahead field goal with 2.5 minutes left to give them the 3-point victory over the Badgers. Now, this could have been a massive upset for a number of reasons. First off, Oregon was the heavy favorite, and they were expected to blow Wisconsin out of the water. Second, it would have made things really interesting when it comes to the Big Ten conference standings. Just like that, a number of other teams would have all of a sudden been alive in the Big Ten title hunt. Not to mention, I'm sure Oregon would have dropped a number of spots in the next round of college football playoff rankings. But they managed to pull out the 3-point victory. They're 11-0 on the season, so they're going to stay at number 1. Right behind them is Ohio State, who took down Northwestern with ease, winning 31-7. Now, things were looking just a little bit interesting early on in this game, as Northwestern was actually leading 7-0 midway through the second quarter, but the Buckeyes outscored the Wildcats 31-0 the rest of the way, and this one was never really close at the end of the half. Will Howard threw for 250 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson each ran for 75 yards. I honestly contemplated putting Ohio State at number 1, but I still have to honor that head-to-head win that Oregon picked up last month. Indiana was off this weekend, but I have them as my number 3 team. Penn State dominated this one from start to finish as they took down Purdue 49-10. Drew Aller threw for 250 yards with 3 passing touchdowns as he had only 2 incompletions for the game. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Nittany Lions ran for 235 yards and had 3 rushing scores. Texas took down Arkansas 20-10. In this game, the Longhorns never actually trailed, but they allowed Arkansas to really hang around in this one. Entering the fourth quarter, Texas had only a 6-point lead, and their lead got cut down to 3 with 12 minutes to go. But Texas scored a touchdown on their next possession to extend their lead to 10, in which they held the rest of the way. Quinn Ewers didn't have a great game, as he completed only 20 of 32 passes for 175 yards. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Longhorns couldn't really get anything going, as they averaged only 3.5 yards per attempt. Now, I will give Texas credit, their defense did step up in this game. They held Arkansas to only 10 points and only 230 yards of total offense. Both Penn State and Texas are really weird teams to me. I get it, they're each 9-1 so far on the year, but they don't feel like the 4th and 5th best team in all of college football right now. Notre Dame picked up the easy 35-14 victory over Virginia. Riley Leonard threw for over 200 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, running back Jeremiah Love led the way as he ran for 150 yards with 2 rushing scores. I said it last week and I'll say it again, I understand that Notre Dame has that really ugly loss to Northern Illinois that came all the way back in week 2, but ever since that point, Notre Dame has honestly looked like a top 3 team in all of college football, and if they didn't have that loss back in week 2, they would honestly probably be the number 1 team in all of college football right now. This right here was essentially a playoff game as Georgia took down Tennessee. Now, early on, things weren't looking good for the Bulldogs at all as they were trailing 10-0, but they outscored the Volunteers 31-7 the rest of the way. Carson Beck had one of his best games of his career, throwing for 350 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while adding 30 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. It's been a rough stretch for Georgia going back the last month or so, but this performance we saw on Saturday night looked like a team that is capable of winning the national championship. Alabama had a really nice easy one this weekend as they took on Mercer and beat them by 45 points. Jalen Milroe threw for 200 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns while adding 50 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Considering Alabama was playing Mercer in this one, not a whole lot more that we need to add. Actually, I will add one thing, because Alabama was winning by so much, 4 quarterbacks got into this game. It's not every day you see 4 quarterbacks show up in the box score. Ole Miss didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. I got Tennessee only falling a couple spots as they fell on the road to Georgia. Nico Iamaleava didn't really have all that great of a game as he completed only 20 of 33 passes for 170 yards. It was running back Dylan Sampson that did most on offense as he ran for over 100 yards and had a rushing score. Things were looking great for the Volunteers early on, especially in the first half, but they were held scoreless in the second half and their chances of reaching the college football playoff took a massive hit. Before we get to the rest of my rankings, I'd like to share with you guys how you can make the college football season more exciting and even win some money. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog Fantasy app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000. That's right, they're giving you up to $1,000 of free money. You can choose your favorite players from every game and decide whether or not they'll go higher or lower than their projections. So to add a little extra excitement to every game and win some money, make sure to use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000 at Underdog Fantasy. You guys can also sign up using the link in my description as well. Boise State had a 21-point victory, but they were actually on upset watch in this game. Midway through the second quarter, they were actually trailing 14-0, and the game was tied entering the half. After San Jose State scored a touchdown with 11 minutes to go in the third quarter, the Broncos then outscored the Spartans 28-0 the rest of the way. Again, despite this being a 21-point victory, Boise State still had only a 7-point lead with 2.5 minutes left in this game. San Jose State was really hanging around and making this one interesting. Quarterback Maddox Matson threw for 300 yards with a passing touchdown. Meanwhile, Heisman candidate Ashton Jeanty had another great game as he ran for 160 yards with 3 rushing scores. This actually goes to show just how crazy of a season Jeanty's having, where he could rush for 160 yards with 3 scores, and that doesn't even seem like one of his better games this year. SMU took down Boston College by 10 points, but they were another team that was on upset watch in this game. Midway through the third quarter, the Mustangs were actually trailing by 1 point, and with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, they had only a 3-point lead, but they scored a touchdown in the final seconds to give them that comfortable 10-point victory. Kevin Jennings continues to be one of the more surprising quarterbacks in all of college football this year. He threw for 300 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. SMU is now 9-1 on the season, and they're 6-0 in conference play, and they're on the verge of clinching a spot in the ACC title game. Miami was off this weekend, so here's where I have them ranked. This loss killed me considering I was so high on BYU, but the Cougars fell to the Jayhawks 17-13. BYU had their chance to win this game late. They were on the 15-yard line with 2 minutes to go, but they just couldn't get into the end zone, and with the loss, their playoff chances likely took a massive hit. Overall, this was just an ugly showing from BYU in a game in which they should have won. I mean, when you look at the numbers as a whole, Kansas had only 13 first downs and 240 yards of total offense. For the game, they ran for only 73 yards, averaging 2 yards per attempt, but they made the big plays when it mattered most, and they stepped up, and this was a massive loss for BYU. Not only did their playoff chances take a massive hit, their chances of reaching the Big 12 title game are in serious jeopardy as well. We'll actually talk about that a little later in my rankings. Texas A&M had an easy one as they took down New Mexico State 38-3. Marcel Reed threw for just under 300 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns while also adding 40 yards on the ground with a rushing score. Yeah, this is New Mexico State, we'll just leave it at that. Army didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Colorado dominated Utah from start to finish, winning 49-24. Shedeur Sanders had another fantastic game, throwing for 340 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Travis Hunter added to his Heisman campaign as he caught 5 passes for 55 yards and ran in a touchdown as well. Meanwhile, on defense, Travis Hunter had 3 tackles, a pass breakup, and he had an interception that he returned 20 yards. Like I said in my video yesterday, and like I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, it's time for a lot of people to put some respect on Arizona State as they went on the road and took down number 16 Kansas State 24-14. Freshman quarterback Sam Leavitt is one of the best young quarterbacks in the nation as he threw for 275 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. He also added 40 yards on the ground as well. Wide receiver Jordan Tyson had another massive game as he caught 12 passes for 200 yards with 2 receiving touchdowns. Remember earlier when I was talking about BYU and their chances in the Big 12 this year? Well, they play Arizona State this week, and whoever wins that game looks like they're going to be potentially playing in the Big 12 title game, with the chance chance to go to the college football playoff. This was probably one of the more exciting finishes of the entire college football season, as South Carolina took down Missouri 34-30. This was a back and forth game in which both teams were exchanging leads late, but South Carolina's game-winning touchdown in the final minute won the game for them. Quarterback Lenore Sellers had one of the best games we've seen from a quarterback all season. He threw for 350 yards, had 50 yards on the ground, and threw 5 passing touchdowns. Things weren't looking good for Clemson as they were trailing late in this game, but a 50-yard rushing touchdown from Cade Klubnik in the final minute gave Clemson the much-needed victory. For the game, Klubnik threw for 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, while also being the team's leading rusher as well. For Clemson, if they would have lost this game, they would have fallen out of the top 25, and they probably would have fallen out of the ACC title contention as well. But with this victory, they're still alive in the ACC, and they're still alive for the college football playoff. Tulane dominated Navy in this one, winning 35-0. Darian Mensah completed 10 of 14 passes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also added 60 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. After a rough start to their season, Tulane has now won 8 straight games, and they're one of the hottest teams in all of college football. They've also locked up a spot in the American Conference Championship game where they're going to be playing Army, and if Tulane wins out and wins that game, they have a strong chance of making it to the college football playoff. After a rough couple of weeks, Iowa State picked up a much-needed victory as they took down Cincinnati 34-17. Rocco Beck threw for 250 yards and had a passing touchdown, while also adding 50 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Although Iowa State fell out of the top 10 with their last couple of losses, they're still alive in the Big 12 title hunt, and there is still a slight possibility they could make it to the college football playoff as an automatic bid. UNLV picked up a big win over San Diego State, winning 41-20. Hajj Malik Williams threw for 250 yards and had a passing touchdown, while also adding 2 rushing scores as well. For a team, the Rebels ran for over 250 yards and had 4 rushing scores. Although it looks like the Rebels aren't going to be playing in the Mountain West title game, this has still been a fantastic season for UNLV, as they could finish the year with 10 or 11 victories. Memphis dominated UAB, winning 53-18. Seth Hennigan threw for 300 yards and had 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, Mario Anderson Jr. ran for 150 yards with a rushing score. I know teams like Army and Tulane are getting a lot of discussion from the American Conference, but Memphis is 9-2, and they could finish their season with 11 wins. Wrapping up today's top 25 is Illinois, who took down Michigan State 38-16. Luke Altmaier threw for 230 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, Josh McCray led the way as he had 3 rushing scores. Outside of Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, and Penn State, there hasn't been a whole lot to be excited about in the Big Ten this year, but if you exclude those 4, Illinois has been the best Big Ten team this year. Well, that wraps it up for today's top 25. What were your thoughts on the rankings? Was there a team I had ranked too high, or a team I had ranked too low, or was there a team I didn't include at all? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm, and it helps share the video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.